Welcome everyone to Spoiler Warning. It is Friday, it is Smackdown tonight, and there is quite a lot of news to share. We are going to be talking about the rebirth of Ronda Rousey, who is booking it, who is writing it, and what are the plans in play. We're going to be talking about Malachi Black, where he's gone, where he's going, and also indulging a little bit about the Women's Tag Team Championship plans here in the WWE, particularly on Raw this coming Monday. We have details of the current investigation that CM Punk is under. We have a little discussion about who Bianca, Becky and Bayley may or may not be facing at WrestleMania, and that's a little touch on what we'll be discussing about WrestleMania closer to the fact, but that is an update and a half. We have a bit on Charlotte's rebrand as well. I do apologise, a little bug somewhere. We have a bit of an update on Charlotte's rebrand and her impending return too. We have an update on the Kevin Owens face turn that I reported a couple of weeks ago, a little bit on the rebuild of the tag division, which actually includes Kevin Owens, and then something on Big E, Cody, Orton and Becky's schedule for return. So it is quite a jam-packed show tonight, lots of news to cover and lots of questions, I am sure. This is Ask Me Anything stream. Jump in with your questions. As I go through the news, I'll be answering periodically between news segments. We already have 31 people on the YouTube side and 9 people as well on the Twitch side. Make sure to hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. We are this close to 1,600. So let's start with a discussion about Ronda Rousey. There was already a plan from Vince McMahon to turn Ronda Rousey heel. However, it wasn't a heel turn in this regard. It was always going to be similar to this in a way that fans got behind rather than actually turning on. However, Triple H took that bull by the horns and has already pivoted sharply. This is the main reason that Ronda Rousey and Liv Morgan have not been too interconnected, and it's the main reason that Shayna was portrayed as such an obvious heel. This may have an effect on the 5-woman match, 5-pack challenge I believe they're calling it, later on during SmackDown, which will feature Xia Li, Sonya Deville, Ronda Rousey, Natalya and Lacey Evans, a returning Lacey Evans. The plan for Liv Morgan going forwards is not to immediately crash against Ronda until it's time for her to lose the championship again. But Ronda Rousey is not expected to be the champion for a little while yet. We'll wait and see how that plays out. That's the last update I had on that one. The Ronda Rousey character has already pivoted. So at this point, if she becomes champion now, it does show that they do not have faith in Liv Morgan. And Triple H, to my knowledge, does indeed have faith in Liv Morgan to continue. I think the most likely scenario is a win for Natalya, and we end up with Liv Morgan versus Natalya, or Liv Morgan versus Sonya Deville, which I feel is a better option for it. I also don't necessarily believe that Shayna Baszler is entirely out of the picture yet, and I do think we are looking at the strong potential for a feud in the near-term future between Ronda Rousey and Shayna Baszler against either Io Shirai and Dakota Kai or Sasha Banks and Naomi. They are building towards a tag team at the moment. Ronda Rousey likely to be kept at least a little bit separate for the time being. I also think it's very telling that there are no faces in that match, with the exception of the current booking of Ronda Rousey. Triple H is going very Steve Austin with Ronda Rousey, and it is very much working. We have an update as regards Malachi Black, formerly Aleister Black, in the WWE. There is discussion of a conditional release, and I can confirm that that is the case. Promises have been made by Malachi/Aleister Black in order to guarantee that he got that release. Part of that is a promise that he will not turn up in WWE for at least a little while yet. There are already overtures from WWE and Triple H enticing Malachi to return, though of course he would be returning to the name Aleister Black upon doing so. There's a number of different people backstage who've been arguing his case for a little while now, none more passionately than Triple H himself. And before we move on to the first load of comments and chat, we have something on the Women's Tag Team Championship plans. My opinion very much has been that Sasha Banks and Naomi will return when Io Sky and Dakota Kai become champions. The rematch is now booked for this upcoming week on Raw, with Aaliyah and Raquel Rodriguez having already won a match in the interim. It means they're not entirely damp squibs, but it... Pardon me. Pardon me. But it also doesn't mean that they're particularly strong champions. Aaliyah and Raquel Rodriguez have got a bit of a push, but it doesn't look like a particularly strong one. Those are our first three pieces of news. We still have discussion on the CM Punk investigation, who will face Bayley at WrestleMania, the Charlotte rebrand, the Kevin Owens face turn, the rebuild of the tag division, both on Raw and SmackDown, and something on the Big E, Cody, Orton, and Becky Lynch returns. So, we go for our first load of comments. We start with Sean Garner, who is asking for the results for the matches tonight. You will not be getting those. Moxie says, yo Tom, how have you been? Been very well, thank you, mate. Very well, thank you. Matthew Charles says, evening Tom, RIP Her Majesty for all of us in the UK. Indeed. Matthew Ham says, who is Roman facing in Saudi? Most likely at the moment, looks like Braun or Karrion Kross. Jaden asks, is Sasha returning? That is the big question. And Spider-Boss says, hey Tom, Sasha and Naomi are on the runway at NYC Fashion Week, walking the runway like models. Indeed, they are. Not like models, they are models. Spider-Boss says, hello Tom. Is it mere it's too predictable that Ronda will win the Fatal 5-Way to find Liv's new opponent? Certainly I think it is. There are lots of other credible challenges there. I think Sonya Deville would make a very, very good heel to try and get over Liv Morgan further. Spider-Boss says, I noticed on Dynamite that Tony Khan got booed when he appeared on TV. There are a lot of people who are CM Punk fans, regardless of the fact that CM Punk is not them fans. Moxie says Ronda and Pierce is really entertaining. I agree. I really enjoyed the Adam Pearce promo, and I think there's more to this than meets the eye. Spider-Boss says, in my opinion, Ronda being heel is the most over woman on SmackDown, probably the one who will beat Liv for the title. I agree with all of that. Traffic says, good afternoon, Tom and Jack. Good afternoon, Traffic. How you doing, mate? Thomas Phipps says, hi, Tom. What are the plans for Solo now that he is in the bloodline? He will stand behind Roman. Those are the whole plans. Sai says, hey Tom and all, hope everyone's good. I'm good, thank you. Welcome, Sai. How you doing? Austin says, RIP the Queen. Michael says, hi Tom. Hello, Michael. And Kieran says, evening, Tom. Hello, Kieran. Matthew Charles says, can we not pretend that the three EVPs of a company went en masse into an employee's locker room to confront him? Punk isn't the only one who's unprofessional here. They're executives. They have been suspended. Nobody pretended that they didn't do anything. I don't know if you've popped in here often, Matthew, but we have never said that anyone is innocent in this. Everyone involved is guilty. Austin Palmeter says, possible Shayna Ronda get together. Absolutely, that is very much on the cards. Michael says Ronda was the most unlikable babyface, and yet here we are. They've turned her heel, and suddenly she's the most likable babyface. Simon is saying MJF. That's not the name, mate. So the now infamous backstage brawl. Yeah. They did, yeah. Sean says, who wins a 5-way? Mike Games says they need to have Ronda versus Shayna in a cage match. I would love that. I would love anything that involves them. I might bring back the Lions Den, personally, if I was booking it. Spider-Man says, I can see Adam Pearce screwing Ronda in the Fatal 5-Way tonight. I find it very unlikely that he would do so. He's not an active wrestler. Revenge cannot be had. What I do think is that something will happen, potentially Shayna Baszler, and it will result in her being very angry at Adam Pearce. It looks like this has replaced the Naomi Sonya Deville storyline. Simon is disappointed that no Shotzi in the 5-way. She can't be involved in everything, mate. She can't be involved in everything. Michael says, I've always wanted Sonya in title matches. Me too. Absolutely me too. I don't think she has a chance of winning it, but I think it'd be a very good thing for her. Now Ryder says, Lacey Evans wins tonight most likely. That is your opinion. Camo says, do you think Punk will be released? More on that shortly. Matthew says, oh God, I just can't care about Natalya. Always ever looks like she's just pretending or is storming into a shop to return a faulty item. To be clear, Natalya is one of the better women's wrestlers on the roster, one of the most clinical and one of the most pristine in how she delivers her offense. She's also a guaranteed boo, which is what Liv needs right now. Sean says, how does Ronda get eliminated in the match if she's not winning? Well, it's not elimination, to my knowledge, so there you go. It could be that she's just not involved in the finish. Or as I mentioned, Shayna Baszler could be involved. Spider-Boss says AEW Dynamite was fun this week. MJF was awesome when he mentioned WWE. He is awesome. He is genuinely an incredibly good professional wrestler that I think more people are starting to realise now. Sneeze at you. Stuart says, evening Tom, hope you're doing good today. Doing very well today. Thank you. Very well indeed. Michael says, is the board of directors still doing the investigation in the WWE? Yes, they are. At the moment, their focus is on the cultural aspect of the investigation. So that is a big part to play in that one. Patrick says, what's the plan for Braun Strowman? They haven't ironed out the plan for Braun Strowman. Haven't ironed out the plan. It is still very much in flux. I do think we are likely to see him going for Roman. I also think it's very possible that we end up with a triple threat, Karrion Kross versus Drew McIntyre versus Braun Strowman as well. Get the tables. Welcome, eh? Has any idea who is replacing Pat McAfee? I think the most likely scenario is Corey Graves. They've used that in the past, and Corey Graves is in attendance tonight. Kevin says Triple H doesn't believe in Liv Morgan. I don't know where you've heard that, because I did say that Triple H does believe in Liv Morgan. Spider-Boss says your thoughts on Liverpool's defeat on Champions League in Italy. It was bad. They were not good at all. Simon says Malachi Black has a 6-month non-compete clause in his conditional new release, according to Meltzer. That's not a complete non-compete. There is very much focus on the WWE in particular. Kervin says Sonya Deville versus Liv Morgan makes sense. I agree with that. Moxie says, do you see Roman tonight? I think he should, to introduce Solo. Yes, I see that happening. I very much see that happening. Then he'll vanish again for a while. Steve says, what's happening, Mr. Colohue? Hope you're well, sir. My question today is in the theme of Extreme Rules. What is your favourite gimmick match in wrestling? Probably Hell in a Cell. I just think we've had the best matches in the Hell in a Cell format, though I have liked some of the others. I've seen some good TLC matches. I've seen some okay cage matches. I like a lot of ladder matches, but for me, Hell in a Cell still has my heart. Simon says, if Triple H books Ronda versus Liv, Liv will get booed again. I agree, and that's why I don't see it happening. Kevin says, tonight maybe Lacey Evans' new character. Yeah, they've taken her off to work out what her character will be. I don't necessarily think we'll see a new character tonight. I don't think we'll have enough time to do so. I just think she'll be involved in the match and then sort of reappear over time. Kieran, I did not misspeak. There is a Ronda Rousey rebirth happening. There is also a bit of a rebrand happening for Charlotte Flair. That is in the next piece of news that I'll be covering shortly. Bailey says how much of the AEW drama is on CM Punk's ego. More on that later. About 2 minutes. Jermaine, you missed something on Ronda Rousey, something on Malachi Black, and something on the plans for the women's tag team titles. James says, not sure if Roman titles can be split up, just can't see how. At the moment I can only see a title split, new title with the draft. That's pretty much all I'm seeing at the moment as well. Sean says, when do we get Cody versus Roman match? Well, Cody's injured, so more on that shortly. King says, love the stream, any updates on Mox's contract? Nothing really at this point in time. The handshake deal, to my knowledge, is about to expire, so either he gets a new extension or a new contract, or he leaves. King Xander says, I get the feeling you don't like Sasha. Every time someone says she should win a title, you always say that you want her to win everything. We have no issue when people say the other 4 horsewomen should win. You're making that up, King Xander. You're entirely making that up. Sasha Banks is one of the most decorated champions in WWE, has won the championship plenty of times. I just want wrestlers to have great stories. I think it's worth pointing out the titles are props. Titles are props to get people over. She doesn't need that. What I think she needs is great storylines and great storytelling. I really enjoyed her storyline with Bianca leading into SummerSlam, for example. I think she's got everything she needs to be huge. She just needs the storylines now, the storytelling. She needs a creative. As regards whether I like her or not, you are seeing things there. I really do enjoy Sasha Banks matches, especially when you consider my favourite pay-per-views of 2019 Royal Rumble, largely because Sasha Banks versus Ronda Rousey was on it. Gotcha, Sean. Thomas says, do you think that by CM Punk being injured, it helped? More on that shortly. Mike says, the only reason Natalya gets so many opportunities is because of who her family is. Just like Charlotte. Not true. Natalya is considered the gatekeeper and the ring general of the women's division. She is the most experienced woman there. She gets consistent match ratings. She gets consistent responses to her heel shtick. She also spends a lot of time training the women. So it's a guarantee of a good match out of the person she's the opponent of. It's got nothing to do with her family. James says Ronda probably gets DQ'd. Very much a possibility. Count out also a possibility, just any way to get her out of the picture. Devil says, any more returns expected to the company? More on 4 returns shortly. So let's get to the next pieces of news. Next up, we're talking the CM Punk investigation. So CM Punk has been suspended for a minimum of 6 months, pending a full formal investigation. At this point, there are potential legal ramifications, so I will be very careful what I'm saying here. The investigation is ongoing at a legal level. Tony Khan has met with CM Punk to get his side of the story. CM Punk, in a boisterous mood, as I mentioned previous, was unapologetic. Certain things have been said to CM Punk about what he is expected to do if he is cleared. However, for the moment, he's been told not to talk to anyone, not to talk at all, and certainly not to approach the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega. For the part of Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks, they are technically under investigation also, but they have been suspended officially, meaning that they will return regardless of the outcome of what is happening. Tony Khan very comfortable with the version of events that he's been given by them and by witnesses such as MJF. The big question is as regards CM Punk, because his version of events is inconsistent at best. One of the reasons we're seeing so much information get out right now about what happened is to muddy the water and to make it very hard to undertake a full investigation of everything going on right now. The court of public opinion basically guarantees an unfair trial. Basically guarantees it. That's what certain people are aiming for. So the investigation as is, the suspension is planned for roughly 6 months or pending the investigation, so the result of investigation may say one way or the other. As regards Ace Steel, there is no plan to use him again in future. CM Punk is planned to be out for a number of months, thus he will serve the time of his suspension injured, and that is the storyline that they are going with. A quick discussion as regards WrestleMania. The plan for WrestleMania very much was Becky Lynch versus Ronda Rousey, and it still is. However, with the injury to Becky Lynch that was sustained when it was, there is excitement about the idea of pushing back Bianca versus Bayley to WrestleMania. Or having Bianca versus Bayley earlier, Bayley would win, and then Becky versus Bayley would take place at WrestleMania instead. Bayley versus Bianca is the money match in the Raw women's division at this point in time. And that, of course, includes anything involving Becky. So Bianca versus Bayley is a money match, that they are building towards. But they have Becky versus Bayley there on a plate if they choose to take it. Plenty of opportunities will be had to make that happen, but the plan right now of Ronda Rousey is building towards Becky Lynch. Finally, as regards the Charlotte rebrand, I say finally, still plenty of news to come. One of the main reasons it's taken so long for Charlotte to return is because Triple H wanted to make some minor tweaks to her overall character. He's happy with the boos and everything that she is getting. He's happy for her to return as a heel. However, with the elevation of Ronda Rousey to her particular position, what he is looking for is a natural foil to that character, a natural opponent to that sort of character, and a natural opponent to Liv Morgan. She would still very much be the queen, but she would be less frustratable, and she would be involved in a few more hardcore matches, because Triple H, when it comes to Ronda Rousey, is interested in making another Triple H. We still have news on the Kevin Owens face turn, the rebuild for the Raw and SmackDown tag divisions, and some return updates on Big E, Cody Rhodes, Randy Orton, and Becky Lynch. So don't go anywhere as we continue to go through the chat. We currently have 83 people watching and only 28 likes, so please consider hitting like as well. And if you haven't done so yet, please consider also hitting subscribe. We are currently extremely close. I'm actually going to plug my phone in because it's losing power. We are extremely close to 1,600 subscribers. We are currently at 1,592. We gained 30 subscribers in the random show that we did on Tuesday about CM Punk. A fantastic showing, I've got to say. We are only 8 away from 1,600 and only 78 away from overtaking the nearest fellow wrestling content creator in my stratosphere who I'm trying to chase. Austin Palmeter says, what do you think the main event will be at Extreme Rules? Maybe a contenders match. I do think there's a strong possibility that it will be either Drew versus Carrion, or I think it could well be Bianca versus Bayley. Bianca versus Bayley is very much a possibility right now. I don't think we're going to get another 6-woman tag just yet, though that could be coming, of course. But I do think Bianca versus Bayley makes the most sense at the moment, given what they've laid out. Night Rider says, who does Braun destroy tonight? Probably more in the tag division. I would say Los Lotharios are in trouble. Matthew says, will the draft, whenever it comes, come with rebrands for Raw and SmackDown, new logos, etc., maybe the return of red and blue ropes? No plan for the return of red and blue ropes. There are some discussions about new logos and new championships, so there is a bit of a rebrand coming, but it won't be massive. Dominic says, Tom, is there going to be a champion versus champion at Survivor Series? Will Raw get a world champion? Thank you. At this point in time, it's still very hard to say. It really does depend. If we're not going to have a draft, there is no chance that they're getting those championships separate, and it does mean that we're more likely to see a Karrion Kross versus Roman Reigns match instead. Jermaine says, I believe the plan is to have Corey Graves on both shows. That is consistent with what they've done. Sean says, if Io and Dakota win on Monday, is that when we see Sasha and Naomi? Great question. Camel says, someone told me that the main event for SmackDown is Drew versus Solo. Well, that would make sense. Revenge would be had, and Roman would show that he's not done. We're also guaranteed to see the Usos if that is the case. Who is your someone? Matthew says, will Triple H keep these gimmick pay-per-views after the initial period? He seems a bit more old school. Not necessarily. He likes not to have gimmick pay-per-views such as Hell in a Cell, TLC, but he does like gimmick pay-per-views such as In Your House. So I do suspect we'll see the return of, for example, the Judgment Day pay-per-view, the Armageddon Day pay-per-view, etc. He did do War Games every year, Matthew. I still think that's going to be a Survivor Series element. Michael said, I think they should have had creative control. It's not creative control. Control demand a rematch rather than having them in the ring say, hey, we have a rematch next week. Maybe they did demand a rematch. They just did it backstage. Sean says, what show does Legado end up? Great question. Simon says the Jon Moxley promo on Dynamite was absolutely fantastic. Got great praise throughout the pro wrestling industry. He and MJF had tremendous promos. It's very good when people are left in the ring alone to make promos, I tell you that. Spider-Boss says, I've been telling Sasha's crew to put an eye on the women's tag team title rematch because I see Sasha and Naomi returning. So you saw exactly what I've been saying for the past 2 months then. Jermaine says, I know Braun Strowman versus Roman Reigns makes sense, but I want to see Braun Strowman versus Gunther sometime down the line. I don't necessarily think against Roman Reigns makes sense because I think he'll lose. I don't necessarily think against Gunther makes sense right now because I think he'll lose. Which really asks a lot of questions. I still think Bobby Lashley may have been the right call. Alyssa says, rumour get The Rock versus Roman Reigns, trouble have returned Cody. Road Royal Rumble, everybody wants to see Cody Rhodes versus Roman Reigns. There is no plan for The Rock to wrestle in the WWE at this point in time. No plan. Spider-Boss says, WWE did a great story in Seth versus Cody. A good non-title feud. Indeed. Got a 5-star match out of that. Sean Cena says, any updates on Moxley? Nothing formal at this point in time. We are exactly where we were previously. Vegeta believes that Natalya is a legend, and I wholeheartedly agree. She's definitely a Hall of Famer, no question. Spider-Boss says, for me, Tony Khan either releases CM Punk or the AEW roster will complain. A lot of people in the AEW roster are not happy at all with how Tony Khan has handled any of this. A lot of people think CM Punk should be fired, but Tony Khan has decided to have the formal investigation first. Simon believes that MJF is a new top guy face of the company instead of Punk, according to Meltzer. That's not the plan at this point in time, but it may be the point in time soon. Will says that's one of the reasons why Sasha and Naomi walked out. They didn't care to book the women's tag team titles in good storylines. I agree. She walked out when she was a champion, so the championship means as much to her as it does to me. I think that's worth pointing out. She'd rather have a good storyline. Michael says the differences in the stories of Punk and Kenny in the books is wild. It really is, and you can really tell who's saying what based on who comes out as the victim here. Vegeta believes Mox is the face. Right now, he is, yes. He's also the gatekeeper. James Jones says, John did good, but when your future is talking about going to WWE, they have a problem. MJF is a smart businessman. I agree with that. I absolutely agree with that. He may have gotten himself a really good deal. A really good deal in order to be convinced to come back to TV. Alyssa says, do you think Adam Pearce gets into Liv Morgan and Ronda Rousey? Don't see Liv Morgan dropping the title yet. I don't think he gets involved in Liv Morgan versus Ronda Rousey. I think he gets involved in just stopping Ronda Rousey in some way, shape or form. I still think there's a possibility that there is either some old school cheating or that we see Shayna in some way involved. Spider-Ball says, who do you see winning the AEW World Title Tournament? I think it will be Bryan Danielson. I think the final will be Bryan Danielson versus Jon Moxley. And I think Jon Moxley will look so much like the safe pair of hands that it basically guarantees he will not be winning it. Devil says, any update on Cody Rhodes or Randy Orton return? Yes, more on that shortly in about 4 minutes. Rizal says, if everything is true, I think CM Punk should be let go. Not everything can be true. There are massive inconsistencies in the stories. Mike says, I can see where CM Punk is coming from. I did something similar when I felt I was wronged in the previous job. Flipped a lot of birds when I quit that job. He could have quit. He chose not to. That's the big thing for me. Thomas, more on that shortly. Simon says, Punk has had a torn triceps injury. Surgery is injured anyway. It's about 6 to 8 months anyway. Would have to vacate the AEW World Title belt anyway. Yes, all of this has already happened. Spider-Boss says, Charlotte as a female version of Triple H would look good because Triple H worked in non-title feuds and Charlotte needs non-title feuds. I still believe that she will return in a title feud in order to make sure people are cheering for Liv Morgan. But I agree. Triple H was always in and around the championship, but he was always in and around non-title feuds as well. I remember the build for Chris Jericho at Fully Loaded way back when. I also think back to the Triple H versus Brock Lesnar feud. No championships involved there. I think if Charlotte was booked like that, we'd be in a very strong position. No, Simon, it's not possible we get Ronda versus Sasha for the SmackDown Women's title at Mania 39. Devil says, are WWE really waiting for Cody to return to dethrone Roman? I feel like it should be Karrion Kross. It could be Karrion Kross. I feel it's more likely they're waiting for Cody. Simon says, Punk believes the Elite spread leaks about the Paige Cabana Dynamite promo situation. Cornetto also strongly believes that as well. Cornette believes that. The people I've spoken to in wrestling media, the people I can speak to at least, have said that they have had no contact whatsoever from the Bucks or Kenny. Some of them I believe. John says, if Bayley versus Becky would happen at Mania, then who will Bianca or Ronda face? Maybe Bianca will face Ronda. I think that'd be a hell of a match. Kevin says, a big opportunity to change Charlotte's character. The Queen gimmick is old. It is, and there'll still be elements of that, but I do feel the Queen as the game works for me. Sean says, Kayla Braxton would do great at doing commentary. I'm sure she would. Corey Graves is more seasoned, experienced, and willing, though. Steve says the chase is on. It is, isn't it, mate? You've been doing really well recently. I've been tracking, as you know. You've been doing really well. You can't be far from monetization now. Kevin says, for me, WrestleMania 39, Rhea Ripley versus Bianca. I'd like that. I think that's a great call. I think that's just a fantastic choice. That, for me, would be absolutely perfect. James Stewart says, would love to see the return of NXT pay-per-views PLE. There is talk of that. There is talk of a potential return for takeovers. I can definitely imagine an NXT takeover return making a lot of sense, particularly when you look at Worlds Collide. That was an NXT pay-per-view. We will see a return to NXT pay-per-views as part of the development towards a return to the black and gold, or at least elements of the black and gold. Steve, by all means, DM me what you just said, if you don't want to make that one public. Devil says, MJF to WWE news died down. It did. MJF chose to remain with AEW. Gotcha. Right, Steve, you're only 20 watch time hours away. I think we can do that. What do people think? As you know, Steve is a friend of the channel. SCW is a wrestling channel. If there's any way we can get 20 watch hours, that'd be fantastic. Even if it's a point of turning on one of his playlists or one of his live shows and just leaving it for a bit. 20 hours is certainly manageable. I think we can do that. I think we can absolutely do that. Or maybe we could do a special live show or something to try and get those numbers up. We can make that happen. Spider-Ball says, I thought Moxley was done in AEW. At no point have I said done. I've said he's currently working on a handshake extension. That doesn't change the possibility that he's signed a new deal. It also doesn't change the possibility that with everything going on with CM Punk, he's decided to stick around a little bit longer. Lots up in the air there. Michael says AEW really needs to do better with the TBS title. Featuring wrestlers who've held it in the current tournament is a good thing. Knight Rider says, will Braun face Omos at Survivor Series in brand versus brand match? Nope, they will do no brand versus brand matches that are one-on-one. They don't at least have a championship. Hi Anthony, how you doing, mate? And James says, gotcha. Simon says, when is Roman dropping one of the world title belts? Soon. Anthony says, Tom, this is an honest question. If you guys have live TV tapings of Raw and Smackdown the upcoming weeks, do they get pushed back or cancelled because of the Queen passing away? They would be pushed back and cancelled, but it would require WWE agreement. A lot of people really not happy how we're all still working, but we no longer have fun. We have a bit more news to cover. I want to start by talking about the Kevin Owens face turn. Now, I've spoken about this for a little while. Certainly, I know that Steve has mentioned it on his channel as well. Kevin Owens, for the last few weeks, I reported this the day he returned, has had a face turn building. Much like the build for Ronda Rousey being a little more Steve Austin, the build for Kevin Owens has been as well. And this is working towards the concept of a tag team run with Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn. Kevin Owens will still be very much involved with the bloodline, but from a distance, as will Sami Zayn, but closer up. The arrival of Solo Sikoa suggests that Sami Zayn might be getting kicked to the curb, and he may eventually want some revenge. Kevin Owens is considered by Triple H too popular to put down as face or heel, so in many ways he's just been getting out of the way of holding him back. A big push is coming for Kevin Owens, and I just want to make it very, very clear. It probably isn't going to be for the top championship, but it will be a very strong push, and Sami Zayn will benefit massively from it. At the moment, Triple H, as we know, is working on rebuilding the tag divisions. The arrival of Braun Strowman really didn't help in that regard, but this is the main reason why we continue to see the Viking Raiders and the New Day kept separate from the Usos. It's also why we see certain teams being built, such as Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn. The plan is a brand new tag division, a number of new teams, and a number of previously lined up teams getting more involved. The Street Profits right now, for example, are a lot more involved than they were, and the breakup of Rey and Dominic Mysterio is also based around getting rid of a few tag teams that have just sort of been hovering unnecessarily in the background for a while. The tag divisions are being rebuilt with a view to splitting the championships once again and making them clear as day on one show and not the other. The Usos expected to be losing the championships relatively soon. Spider-Boss says, I think MJF will cash in on the winner of the AEW World Title Tournament on an AEW Grand Slam. Does he have a briefcase? Is there a cash-in option? Kervin says, Tony Khan needs to make Jon Moxley, Jericho and Bryan AEW EVP. That's how he got into this mess. Let's not have any EVPs. It's not helping. Hector says, happy Friday, Tom. Hope you're doing well. Do you know if WWE ever had interest in Daniel Garcia? Nope. Sid says, do you think that Triple H being in charge will increase the chance of Sean Waltman getting into the Hall of Fame as a singles wrestler? Yes. Mike says, Rhodes wins the Rumble. Sammy turns face on the Usos at the Rumble. Sammy versus Roman for the title in February. Sammy and KO beat Usos for tag titles. And Sammy cost Roman the title to Cody at WrestleMania. Apart from that last bit, I think all of that is very legitimately possible. I think it's more likely that Cody just beats Roman. I think that's much more likely. Vegeta says, Cross beats Drew at Extreme Rules, then beats Roman in Saudi, looks invincible. Cody wins the Royal Rumble, beats Cross at Mania, while Roman faces The Rock and the Usos solo are involved in it and their own. The Rock is not booked at this point in time to wrestle at WrestleMania or to wrestle at all for the WWE. The most likely WrestleMania match is Roman Reigns versus Cody Rhodes or Seth Rollins versus Cody Rhodes. Michael says, which would you prefer, the WWE way of hometown talent losing or the AEW way of hometown talent winning? It depends on the feud. James says TK needs to make ones that are not talent. You can't be both unless you're putting over. I agree. I think the best idea is William Regal. Simon congratulates Tony Storm. Anthony says, Tom, how much power do the executives of the company have? Quite a lot of booking power, but they're not allowed to just barge into the talent psych room, otherwise they wouldn't have been suspended. Razar says, is it going to be Bianca versus Liv at Survivor Series, or one of them drops the title? Most likely scenario right now for me is Bayley versus Liv at Survivor Series. Noob says, hello Tom, welcome mate. James says, Solo to take the IC title? Nope. Simon says, Jon Moxley taking a long vacation period, time off very shortly, according to Alvarez and The Observer today. Interesting, because The Observer, I believe, reported today that he's cancelled his holiday/time off. Spiderboss says, what's next for Mandy's title reign now she doesn't have any opponent? A new opponent. Patrick says, do you see a Raquel versus Charlotte anytime soon? Yes. Alyssa says, the biggest threat to Roman Reigns, The Rock, or Seth Rollins, or Cody Rhodes? Cody Rhodes. The Rock is no threat to Roman Reigns. He is not booked for a match in the WWE anytime soon. Anthony says, if MLW going on break, do you think Court Bauer maybe goes to WWE and asks them to buy the company outright, because it seems like they can't afford to pay big stars? I think Jacob Fatu consistently. No, I don't think Court Bauer does that at any point. I think he continues looking for investors, and I think he eventually finds them. Kieran says, I'd like a woman on the commentators table. I agree with that. I think there are some good options as well. I didn't mind it when Renee Young was doing it. It'd be great if she was back. James says TK needs to put ones like William Regal. Yep, agreed. Ed says, Steve, I will have your content on and leave it in the background for you. Every little does help, and 20 hours isn't that much. If 20 people watch an hour-long show and basically just leave it on in the background while they go and do something else, Steve gets monetized. You know the deal, says Random, but who has more WWE matches in the future, Cena or The Rock? Cena, no question. Devin says, any Sasha news? Yeah, a little bit. Ed says, MLW will be back soon. They just announced new taping soon. They will. Quickly on the Sasha thing, one thing I want to say, we are now at the point where the return is so close that I will no longer be reporting on it because I don't want to spoil the exact time of arrival. I have no thoughts on the passing of Queen Elizabeth. Noob, I didn't know the woman. Kieran, the guy in question, is currently in the chat. It is SCW, the wrestling channel. Just click on his name and it'll take you right there. Failing that, Ed, if you wouldn't mind grabbing a link for us, or Sai, that'd be absolutely fantastic. Dog Knight says, I've just come to the realisation that MGF's theme is currently the best in professional wrestling. Go for it. I mean, I love certain themes and don't love certain others, but if you like it, love it. Spiderboss says, could we see Kevin Owens coming to save Sammy from the bloodline? Yeah, that may have been what I was thinking of. Bailey says, how likely is it to hear Adam Pearce proclaim War Games later this year? Pardon me. It's not guaranteed. Pardon me again. As I say, I think we're unlikely to get War Games at Survivor Series this year, but I think we are likely to get War Games at Survivor Series. Kevin says, if the plan is Charlotte versus Liv Morgan soon, but Liv Morgan better beat Charlotte. Yeah, the idea would just be that Charlotte will be there to get booed and put someone else over. Simon says, what do you see Sasha doing at Mania? Wrestling. Jaden says, do you think it's possible that Roman will face Braun at Survivor Series? Possible? Yes. Everything is on the table. Thank you, Sai. James says, MJF is smart and gets this business. Like he made sure he took over and is starting a bidding war. Yep, spot on. He's done everything right. Martin Carrillo, welcome, mate. Says, hello there, Tom. Hope you're doing great. Truly respect your news and reports. Thank you, mate. I like that. Thank you. Leisha says, hi, Tom. Great segment today. Thank you. With Solo now part of the Bloodline, do you still see Naomi joining them? Yes, I do. Traffic says, speaking on tag teams, is Imperium expected to remain free man, or did Giovanni make a one-off appearance? They are going to be a three-person faction going forwards. Gunter will have Imperium, Giovanni and Ludwig as a tag team backing him up. They will be competing for tag team championships, and I do think there's a strong possibility they will be winning them. Matthew Charles says, random side note, I really wish they'd have given Sammy the briefcase. Our tension of him being the honorary Uso and the one who could bring it all down at any moment would have been really interesting. They wouldn't have trusted him. They wouldn't have allowed him to get this close if that was the case. Joey, welcome, mate, says, hey Dom, do you know what Braun Strowman will do on Smackdown? Will he go after Volta? Not sure. If he goes after Volta, he'll lose. If he goes after Roman, he'll lose. So I really don't know. Will says, with Mako versus Roxanne and NXT this past Tuesday and the match being great, Was this a trial for Roxanne to see if she can hang with the main roster whenever she eventually gets called up? No, it was an exhibition match. There is a long list of people who've requested matches with Meiko Satomura. Meiko Satomura is planning to stick around in NXT and work as a trainer for people like Roxanne. With this in mind, there'll be a lot of people on that list getting their match. Essentially, Meiko Satomura is going to do in NXT what Natalya is doing on the main roster. Martin says, do you see AEW becoming a power struggle, or will all situations get fixed by time? Neither. I see it being tense for a little while yet, but I see Tony Khan being in charge for the foreseeable. Spider-Boss says, the winner of the casino ladder match guarantee a title shot to the winner. Thank you, Spider-Boss. Appreciate that. Chris Wrestling Views, how you doing, mate? Says, what's up? How's everybody doing today? Hopefully a lot of people responded and said that they're all doing well, because I really hope everybody is. How are you doing, Chris? Joey says, when do you think Legado will debut? Soon. Simon says, are we getting another Kevin Owens versus Roman Reigns feud again? I suspect not. Hector says, welcome Hector. With what we know now, WWE being able to re-sign both Sami and KO have paid off in less than a year, with KO main eventing Mania against Stone Cold, and Sami doing some of the best work of his career with the Bloodline. Sami was never in doubt. The risk was Kevin Owens. Noob says, will Charlotte's character be a babyface? Nope. Martin says, have you heard anything about more character adjustments, turns? And not at this point in time. I've already spoken about 2 so far, and a little bit more about potential returns. So at this point, that's all I've got for you. Spider-Boss says, why do people think Karrion Kross can beat Roman for the title? Because he's just returned and people think Triple H is really high on him, and Triple H kind of is, but not that high. Not that high. Moxley says, I'd love to see Paige and Pat McAfee on the same announce table with Michael Cole. That would be fire. Paige, to my knowledge, has not spent a lot of time in the announce booth, and not many people want her to take that spot, though I do feel she was an extremely good GM. Simon says, your thoughts on the Thunder Rosa AEW backstage heat story going around today? It's all very one-sided information is what I'll say. Joey says, was Malachi given a non-compete clause if he was released? Yes. Mike says, rumours flying around Roman Reigns possibly playing a villain in an MCU movie. Might know more during the D23 announcement tomorrow. Could do. That could be a lot of fun. I'm interested to hear where those rumours are coming from. What's the source on that one, Mike? Martin says, do you expect any NXT UK talent moving up to the main roster that hasn't been on NXT TV yet? Honestly, not at this point, no. Spider-Boss says, if War Games ever happens, I see the Bloodline versus Drew and some baby faces. Yeah, absolutely. Imagine, for example, that team was Drew McIntyre, Sheamus, Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn. Alicia Miller says, I missed Pat McAfee news. Why are they looking for a replacement for him on Smackdown? He is temporarily working on something else. He'll be back in about 4 weeks. So we have the last bit of news regarding the returns and the return schedules of Big E, Cody Rhodes, Randy Orton and Becky Lynch. So I've gained a little more clarity on the situation. Becky Lynch is training with both arms again. She is nearly fit and firing. She's not quite there. My expectation will be that she'll be back in time for Survivor Series. Randy Orton is expected around the same time, is likely to return in the build-up to Survivor Series and work alongside Matt Riddle. This will continue the rebuild for the tag division. So the schedule at the moment is in and around Survivor Series, possibly just before. As regards Big E, the schedule is a little more up in the air. It has been pushed back at this point in time to an expectation of around WrestleMania. Anytime before that is an absolute bonus. He has not recovered as quickly as initial estimates suggested. At the moment, WrestleMania seems the most likely return date for Big E, or the Monday after is slightly more likely. Finally, as regards Cody Rhodes, he is currently the favourite to win the Royal Rumble. He will be returning at the Royal Rumble unless a further injury occurs. So the return schedules for those four: Becky Lynch around Survivor Series, Randy Orton also around Survivor Series, possibly just before. Big E not expected back until around WrestleMania. Cody Rhodes expected back at the Royal Rumble. Just before we continue, we currently have 88 viewers 142 likes. If you're able to hit like, please consider doing so. We're currently at 100 viewers across both of our channels, and we are still looking for subscribers to get us up to 1,600. So if you haven't done so yet, please remember to hit subscribe and help us to grow the channel. Anthony says, Tom, in terms of merchandise sales at the same point when they were champions in the face of the company, who had better merch sales in your honest opinion, John Cena or Roman Reigns? It's not really in my opinion, it's very much a global fact that Roman Reigns has sold more. John Cena's merch only really appealed to kids. Roman Reigns' merch right now appeals to everyone. Bailey says, we don't often give WWE creative credit when they do good work, but the Miz and Dexter Lumis segments have been first rate. I also think there's plenty of good segments and good storylines that we don't really see credited. I think the Cody Rhodes return was very well done. I think the Mandy Rose Sonya Deville storyline was very well done. It's a shame it got ruined the way it did. Simon says, who's got more future champion star power potential, Tom, in your opinion? I think Roxanne's there now. I think Cora Jade is not necessarily at the same level right now. Vegeta says, Mako is great, to be honest. She is indeed. James says, for NXT UK, I love to... Okay, moving on. Spiderball says, Roxanne and Cora Jade can benefit from work with Mako. They can, and so can many others. A lot of people will be popping down to the Performance Centre to work with Mako. Don't be surprised if you're going to be seeing photos of Liv Morgan working with Mako in the near future. Yes, Patrick, Ginny was released. She just hasn't made it public. Jermaine says, hey Tom, good question for you. Which one do you prefer, Cherry Diet Coke or Cherry Diet Dr. Pepper? I don't believe there is a Cherry Diet Dr. Pepper, at least not where I am, but it sounds amazing. Anthony says, Tom, how much power do these EVPs have? I've already read that and responded. They don't have the power to be barging in anywhere. If they did, they wouldn't have been suspended. Simon, I don't believe we have a new Daniel Bryan. I think we have a Johnny Gargano. There's similarities, certainly, but I don't think the characters are in any way similar. Devil says, will Randy return and turn on Riddle? Nope. Spider-Boss says, who's the second top heel on NXT Women's Division after Mandy? Cora. Sai says, I have a nasty feeling Sammy may be comedy fodder for Braun next in his gatekeeper to Roman role. Very possible, unfortunately. Simon, I can't answer one day. Spider-Boss says, I think Paige could replace Adam Pearce as an on-TV authority figure. I don't think Adam Pearce needs replacing. I think he's perfect in the role that he's got. Jermaine says, hey Tom, any possibility we get a heel Naomi to join the Bloodline, beat Liv Morgan for the title, or face a revenge if Sasha Banks can lose the title to her? It's not impossible, no. I see most of that happening, I just don't see Liv Morgan involved in it. Joey says, do you think Bronson Reed could be returning next? Contact has been made at this point in time because Bronson Reed has just finished up with New Japan. Simon says, I remember the Sami Zayn versus Braun Strowman feud match at Roadblock 2016. I hope it wasn't good the first time. It wasn't good the first time, that's true. Martin says, out of all the remaining NXT UK talent, who would you like to see become world champion? Mako. Definitely Mako. There isn't many people, unfortunately, so still Mako. Patrick says, do we see Orton versus Matt Riddle at WrestleMania? Possibly. I don't think so. I think they're very, very, very happy to continue with the tag team. To my knowledge, Rizar, yes, he did get the back surgery. Vegeta says Charlotte tonight. Not to my knowledge, no. Spider-Boss says Sasha Naomi versus Io Dakota would be cool to see. It would be, wouldn't it? Will says, with Sasha openly saying she wants to wrestle Mako, do you see Sasha going down to NXT, or will Mako make a one-time appearance on the main roster or a pay-per-view? Either. Very much either. JJ, welcome mate, says, hey Tom, you might not know, but do you think Becky will return with her long again? I don't know what long again means. And have the man attire instead of the wild clothes. No, she will still have elements of her current persona, but she will be the man when she returns. Kevin says, Bayley the new Raw champion. My question is, why Bayley already a big star? Why not? Don't forget the championship is a prop, but it's a prop that she wants. It's not so much about the championship, it's more just about attacking Bianca, let's be honest. Spider-Boss says, who do you see as the future face of the women's division? Bianca or Rhea or Liv? Bianca, she's not the future face, she is the now face. Martin says, do you think that Damian Priest has been lost since losing the US title? Nope. John says, I saw that PWInsider said Malachi got a conditional release. What is a conditional release? It's where you get released, but you have to accept new terms to your contract to do so. Natalya versus Mako would be a hell of a match, I'll tell you that. Ben Newman says, will Austin Theory successfully cash in? They don't know. They actually don't know. He was originally meant to be losing his cash in, but things change. Kevin says, multiple reports said Thunder Rosa asking for a release. Who were those reporters? What's your source, Kevin? Steve says, I'd love the 5 members of the Bloodline to be the SmackDown Men's Survivor Series team. The feud of Raw can be that the Undisputed title and tag titles are never on Raw and held hostage on SmackDown. Could be. I'd like that. I think that'd be pretty cool. You'd get a team of Seth, Kevin Owens. They've been teammates before. And not Bobby Lashley. Bobby Lashley's taken on Gunter, and I will not hear anything else about that. It's kind of hard after you get to those two. I mean, there's other big names, but not too many. James says, it seems good amount are asking, and TK should release it, will free up his salary cap and he can make moves. Not sure what you mean in there. JJ, she still has long hair. She still has hair, mate. I wouldn't worry too much. Hector says, even though Seth said he was done with Riddle, do you see he's going to Extreme Rules or no? I do see going to Extreme Rules, yes. Joey says, did you see Bobby Fish's comments about CM Punk? No, and I'm okay with it. Spiderbell says, Bayley versus Bianca is a good feud. We could see the end of their feud of 2021. I agree. Mike says, IGN reported on the coverage of D23 last night that John Cena might play the Thing in the Fantastic Four MCU reboot. Not good on might so far. Joey says that they're going to break up Triple M or keep them together. Keep them together. Why would they break them up? There's no reason to. Simon says, your thoughts on Liz Truss as our new PM? Just as crap as the last one. And Will says, by the way, Tom, you called it with Mako being a player coach in NXT way before NXT UK closed down. Another one for the bad guy. Yes, very much the case. I also called it that Malachi Black was saying goodbye to people backstage in AEW. And then if you don't watch, spoiler warning, then you have to pay for that news several days later. Thanks, Will. I appreciate you pointing that one out. Martin says, what would you do for the IC and US title for WrestleMania next year? No idea. It's way too far off. Way too far off. Simon says, any new updates or dates on Bray Wyatt's return? Could the Wyatt family reunite with a possible Eric Redbeard return? Very unlikely we'd see a new Wyatt family. Very unlikely, especially considering they were feuding last time. So I wouldn't say so, no. New updates is very much that they are still talking to Bray Wyatt, but it is very much talking. Thank you for sourcing, Kervin. Spider-Boss says Triple M could work as a tag team with Mansoor and Marseille. Mansoor and Marseille. They could, indeed. We are out of news and we are out of comments, so I am going to wrap us up. I have been Tom Colohue. I hope to see all of you for tonight's SmackDown watch party. You've all been fantastic, and I'll see you all very soon.